The court is back in session, and the floor is given to the defense team for Mr. Nguyen Chia to resume his line of questioning to this witness. You may now proceed. Wait, Mr. Kope. You may now proceed first, Judge Lavanya.
Oui.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President, for giving me the floor. I would like to make a remark. This morning, Mr. Kope, you referred to document E3/849. In that document, a number of figures regarding the numbers of troops in certain divisions. I have cross-checked the French and English versions of that document, and it appears that the French version is incomplete. I am saying this now quite simply because I want to point out that the Chamber sent a mail to ITU requesting them to cross-check the translation, knowing that the original document is in Khmer.
Et je précise que
And let me point out that the missing part is precisely the number of soldiers in Division 450 present at Kampong Cham.
Thank you very much, Judge Laverne, for this clarification. Mr. Witness, before the break I was asking you about the general tasks or objective of the Revolutionary Army of Cambodia after liberation. Let me assist you a bit. Is it your recollection that the Revolutionary Army of Cambodia had two objectives? One was to defend the country, and two, to build up the country after the war?
The answer, yes. These are the objectives of the army. That is to defend and build up the country. And they were at the airport, the new airport work sites to construct that site, that airport as well.
Is it then also fair to say that at least all soldiers from Division 502, while working at the Kampong Chhnang airfield, were performing their normal, regular duties as soldiers, namely to defend and build the country?
Witness, sorry, I could not get your questions. Could you replace it?
It's maybe a difficult question, I realize. We've established that the goals of the Revolutionary Army of Cambodia, to which Division 502 belonged, was to defend and to build the country. Did the building of the airport at Kampong Chhnang form a part of this objective? Was the building of the Kampong Chhnang airfield something to, in order to defend and build the country? In other words, were the soldiers belonging to 502, while working at the airfield, doing their normal duties and jobs as soldiers?
Answer. Soldiers from 502, there were two parts. One was to defend the country, and another one was to build the country. And for my group, we were told and instructed to go and construct the airport, the new airport airfield. So half of us were assigned to that work sites. I could not recall it well, and we had different duties to defend the country and to build the airport work sites.
I understand, but is it correct when I say that all soldiers from Division 502, when working at the airport or the airfield, were performing their duties as soldiers of the army, as also confirmed in the Constitution of Democratic Kampuchea?
Answer. The tasks and duties performed by the soldiers were the same as what you have stated. So we, the task of all soldiers were to defend and to build the country.
Now, do you know whether there was any soldier from Division 502 who was put to work at Kampong Chnang airfield not as part of his regular job or duty, but because he had to be refashioned? In other words, was there any soldier who was working at Kampong Chnang who was punished?
Answer. I have no idea. As for my case, I did not know whether I was sent there for refashioning. It was my general duties and tasks there, and later on I realized that I was linked to the enemy, and I was told that I had relationship with enemy, and my relatives and families were linked to the previous tendency.
We will speak about that later, but my question was about the soldiers belonging to 502, whether they were working in the performance of their normal duty or were somehow punished. But let me move on to other divisions. Do you know whether members of Division 310 or 450 were working at the airfield because they were soldiers performing their task to defend and build the country, or whether they were there because of some form of punishment?
Answer. During that time, I did not know. We started the work at around 6 or 7 a.m. in the morning, and we met each other at around 11, and we arrived at our lunch at our place that we had lunch at around 11:30. We did not know whether we were there to be disciplined or refashioned.
What about the East Zone soldiers? The ones that you spoke to, were they there because of their duties as normal soldiers, defending and building the country, or were they there because they had to be refashioned? Do you know?
Answer. Soldiers from his zone, I have no idea. But workforce from the East Zone were sent to chop and cut woods. At that time, I was instructed to go with those men to chop and cut woods. So I did not know whether they were sent into the forest to be refashioned. So we had to chop and cut woods in accordance with the quota sets. For example, one day we may have been assigned to chop 5 full load of woods. So I did not know whether we were sent into the forest for refashioning. We were there chopping down and cutting woods. We were sleeping in hammocks, and many of us got sick of malaria. So everyone was in the same working condition. We left for our workplace at around 6 or 7 a.m. in the morning. We had to be ready and get our equipment and materials to go into the forest and chop woods.
So those East Zone soldiers that you said you saw were having the exact same working conditions, and nobody was forcing them to work. They were doing the exact same thing as the Division 502 soldiers. Is that correct?
Answer. I only knew the working condition of the men who were with me in the forest. I did not know about other men in the sawmill section or in the transporting section. I was in the forest. I was a driver to be there and to collect the woods. So I did not know about others, whether they were sent to other places for refashioning.
One last attempt, Mr. Witness. Did you see soldiers from your division pointing guns at soldiers from East Division and ordering them to work? Or were they just waking up in the morning and doing the exact same thing as the soldiers within Division 502?
Answer. No. There were no guns pointing at us. It did not happen at my place. I did not know about other places. We were staying and living in different places. When we were in the forest, we were not pointed with the gun or rifle. So we had to work hard in the forest. We were focusing on our work because we were afraid that we were killed. Everyone was thinking that we had nowhere to go beside working.
I will move to another topic, Mr. Witness. Yesterday you said something about an office, transportation office, 3 kilometers west of the airfield. And at one point in time you were there at night, and then subsequently you heard screaming. Can you tell me again and be a little more specific as to where trucks that you referred to yesterday were coming from? Which direction were they coming from?
Answer. It was at night time. It was so dark I could not see. The truck belonged to the army, and it came from the airport worksite. I heard the sounds of the trucks, and at my place there were bamboo bushes. I could hear the sounds of screaming. I am not sure whether it was the sounds of people or it was the sounds of animals. And later on, I went past that location. I could smell the decomposed body. And normally at that area, worker or people would drive a vehicle to go and look for wild meat as well. I heard the sounds of screaming, and the day after, I went past that place and I could have the bad smell.
How do you know that this bad smell had something to do with the screaming that you heard the night before?
Answer. On the day I walked past that place to my sleeping quarter, I could smell it because the place that I could smell the stench was about 200 meters away from my sleeping quarter. On that day, I went into forest to find wild meat to eat, and I was in the forest to search for leaves in order to cook for my meal, and I realized that there was a bad smell.
I understand, but I'm trying to follow you and to see how the trucks that you saw at night were related to screams, possibly from animals, and subsequently linked to a bad smell. How was it that you connected those three things? What made you think at the time that these were related? The trucks, the screams, and the bad smell.
Answer. In that period, everyone, both the 17 April and base people, would be refashioned if we did not adhere to the principle. After a few times refashioning, if we did not deter, we would be transferred elsewhere. And I could see group chiefs and unit chief disappear in every 2 or 3 months. And mostly older worker disappeared from the work site. I did not know whether they were transferred to work elsewhere. What I knew is that I did not see them. They disappeared.
Do you remember, Mr. Witness, talking to an investigator of the Office of the Co-Investigating Judges, and you pointing to him the big tree and the place that you said you heard screams or possibly smelled a bad odor? Do you remember you showing him this site?
Answer: I could recall it. During that time, I went to uproot the swa leaves, and I could see the vehicle on the spot. After a while, I walked past the area and I could see a big tree located in that location. I was with the investigator at that time. I showed him the location of the big tree. Before I accompanied the investigator there, I saw a few ditches or pits. But when the investigator went with me, there were no pits, perhaps because the pits were filled with the trees, the died trees or leaves and soil. I could recognize there was a tree there, deer tree.
And do you remember that this particular investigator told you at one point that no remainders whatsoever belonging to human skeletons were found at this place that you pointed out to him? Did he tell you that?
Answer: he told me, yes, nothing remained. There were shallow pits. In the period, I could hear the screaming from that location. That is what I recall, and as I stated, the day after, I went past that place and I could smell something. It happened long time ago, and I left that area also long time ago, so the place changed.
Why did you say earlier that this screaming that you said you heard could also come from animals? What made you say that?
Answer: it could be the screaming of something because I could feel the stink. And later on, I saw a few pits at that location, the location where the truck left.
Do you know in which sector of which zone the Kampong Chnang airfield was located?
Answer: it was called West Zone. Sector 20 something and District 20. I do not know whether sector 30 something or 20 something. I do not recall it, but it was in West Zone.
That is indeed correct, Mr. Witness. Sector 31, does that ring a bell?
Answer. Yes, that number, sector 31. And as for zone, it was a west zone, district 20. I could not recall it well. I do not know whether I said is correct or not.
Do you remember who the chief was of Sector 31?
Answer. I could not recall it. I forget it. I forget it all. It happened a long time ago.
Tasarun? Does that jog your memory?
Answer. I heard people refer to this man as Tasarun. Perhaps so.
Do you know anything about security offices, detention facilities belonging to Sector 31?
Answer. The security office of Sector 31 was referred to as the best office, which was located in Kampong Chnang province. It was called the best security office.
And how far was Tabe's office from Kampong Chnang airfield?
The answer. It was far from the airport worksite. From the provincial town hall to Tabe security office, it was about 500 or 600 meters. But if we left the airport worksite, it was about certain kilometers. I could not recall it.
Because of the time, I will move on to the next subject that I would like to discuss with you, Mr. Witness. If I understand your testimony correctly, you were accused of stealing rice at one point in time. Can you explain to us again why exactly was this accusation brought against you? Why were you accused of stealing rice?
Your Honour, my memory of the evidence was that he was accused of providing rice to people from the East Zone because they were affiliated with the Vietnamese. That was my memory from the examination in chief. It's certainly in his statement, so I'm just wondering if that can be clarified before the next question is asked.
I'd be happy to be more neutral in my formulation. You were accused of providing rice to East Zone troops, is that correct?
Answer, yes, it is correct. It was the time that I took the rice to the workers from East Zone while they were working in the forest to chop down trees. There were 50 or 60 sacks of rice that I had to bring into the forest. And I also went to collect the medicine. I met the office chief. He asked me why I transported a large amount of rice. You transported this rice for the enemy? And I said at that time, perhaps so, because you said I transported rice for the enemy. I may have given to the enemy. And while I was going to collect the medicines, I got a few packets of medicine I got the painkillers. I was asked by the person responsible at that place why I needed to have the medicines for the workers. And he said that those workers could have the traditional medicines in the forest, that is boiling the herbs and roots of the trees. And I did not know at that time that he was saying something seriously to me, and I responded like what he said. I may have given the medicine and rice to the enemies.
Let me rephrase. Was the implication that you had stolen this rice from Division 502? Was that the implication? Unlawfully taken from Division 502?
Answer. The rice belonged to Division 502. It was under the responsibility of economic section. Bong Laway told me at that time that I had to go to the economic section to get rice for certain workers, and he told me that I had to tell the person there that how many workers I was with and how many vehicles which were with me in the forest. Once again, the food and rice were under responsibility of 502 in the kitchen or economic section. And I had to go and collect the food supplies and the medicine from that place for the workers in the forest who were working in the forest chopping down trees.
Did you have a written instruction or written military order with you from Levay? An order, a piece of paper that you could show to anybody that would stop your car or your vehicle?
Please repeat your question.
As I understand your testimony, you were ordered to bring rice to East Zone troops. Did you have a written order with you, something that you could show to any soldiers stopping you while you were on the road?
President Witness, please hold on, and the International Deputy Co-Prosecutor, you have the floor.
I'm not sure whether the evidence he has given is that he was ordered to give rice to East Zone troops. And so I would ask whether or not the Council would clarify whether that rice was intended for the East Zone troops or for other workers. I'm not sure that it's clear that he said that it was ordered that rice would be going to East Zone troops. My understanding of the evidence that that was something done on his discretion. I'm just wondering if that can be clarified.
I understood his testimony to be that Levay, the number 2 of Division 502, gave him an instruction to bring this rice, and I was trying to find out whether this instruction that he talked about was accompanied by a written order, or whether it was something that was done orally only. So again, Mr. Witness, I will try to rephrase. You said Commander Levay gave you an instruction. Did he give you a piece of paper to accompany with the rice that you were transporting?
When I went to collect the rice, he didn't give me any letter of authorization. He only instructed me that I should go to collect, say, 20 or 30 sacks of rice and the amount of fish. And when I arrived at the location, I just relayed the instruction from him to the people there. And the same thing applied when I went to collect medicine. And he never issued me any letter of authorization at all. He only gave me his instructions verbatim, and there was nothing else.
I understand, but can you then explain to us who it was that arrested you, when, where exactly, why?
I was arrested when I brought back the logs. I dropped off the logs, and then I made a report on the trips and the total number of logs. And I had not yet finished my report when they came to call me to attend a meeting. And I asked where the meeting would be held, and I was told it would be held in a pagoda, which name I cannot recall. And I said they could go first and I would follow, but they insisted that I should get on board in the same vehicle. So I went with them in the same vehicle with the report that I had not yet finished. I was wearing my shorts at the time, and I had a hand-rolled tobacco. And when we were halfway, they told me to throw away my tobacco, as the smoke was fuming inside the vehicle. And when I arrived at the pagoda, suddenly they all came over me and arrested me. And of course, the inside that temple, there were no other people, so I knew straight away that it was not a meeting, but it was an arrangement for my arrest.
I understand, but surely it was a misunderstanding. You could have told them immediately that you had been given a oral order from the number 2 of Division 502. Why didn't you tell them that you had this direct order?
I didn't tell the person because the person should have been aware of what I did, and as he was a member of the division and I used to make a joke with him, and he should be aware that I would be sent anywhere with instruction from the leadership level of the division, and I was not aware that he asked me to go with him and for the purpose of my arrest. Usually I would go anywhere I was instructed by my superior to collect equipment or tools or any parts of the logistics, and I never encountered any problem at all.
But surely one word from LeVay to whomever arrested you was enough. I'm not sure if I can understand why you were even arrested.
Neither did I for the reason of my arrest. I only made a joke with him about the rice, as I teased him that if I transported the rice to the enemy, then he should say that I was also an enemy. It was simply a joke. but I didn't know that he took it seriously. And maybe it's because those soldiers which were brought in from the East Zone were categorized as an enemy or something, and maybe my word triggered something that I was arrested. I did not know for real.
I understand. So then this soldier brought you to a pagoda. How long was the drive? How many kilometers was it between the moment you told him a joke and the moment that you arrived at this pagoda? Was it half hour, 20 minutes, longer?
I actually dropped off the rice quite some time ago, and I was arrested not at the forest, but when I arrived at my place. My place was to the west of the sawmill, and it was about only 1 kilometer from where the division was. And as I repeatedly said, I did not stay at that location regularly, and usually I only slept overnight when I could not make a return trip.
I understand. Maybe I completely misunderstood your testimony, but I thought you said that because of the stealing of rice, you ended up in Tuol Sleng. Was that your testimony? Or did I misunderstand it? Or is your testimony that you ended up in this pagoda, the situation was solved, and then you could return?
I was arrested from my place and transported to a pagoda. Then I was further transported from the pagoda to Phnom Penh at night time. I was initially arrested around 5 o'clock or 5 p.m. And so while I was transported to the pagoda and to Phnom Penh, it was during the night time, and I could not tell you how many people were arrested at the same time, as I was blindfolded. And when I was tossed onto the track from the temple, I heard some voices onto the same track, so I knew that there were other people who had been arrested. And when we arrived at the location, we were kicked off the track, and I fell on top of other people who had been kicked off the tracks before I was kicked off. And we were all blindfolded, so we would not recognize one another.
But can you explain to me how you thought at the time that you had been brought to something called Tuol Sleng?
The person who told me to escape was the one who told me that the location was Tuol Sleng. And before I escaped, he gave me an escape sketch, a plan, and I simply follow it. I was told that the location was Tuol Sleng or S21, and if I were to be detained there, I would die. So I should try my best to flee from the area, and so I did. And while I was there, I heard various voices of people who were detained there. And while I was in the sewage system, I could even hear the voices above me, since some of the covers or some of the lids of the sewage systems were opened. And I had some marks on my body, as they used a cigarette butt to burn the part of my faces and neck. And let me tell you, to survive, it means like I was reborn.
I don't have many minutes anymore, Mr. Witness, but just a few more questions. Were you blindfolded all the time? Also blindfolded when you enter this premises that you call Tool Slang?
I was blindfolded since I was arrested and tied at the pagoda, but I knew that I would die, so I asked them for a cigarette. That's all I can say about that event.
But if you were blindfolded, how did you even know that you were in Phnom Penh?
It was when I was kicked off the vehicle, and when I entered the premises, the blindfold was a little bit loose, and although it was at night time, I realized that I was in Phnom Penh. And as I said later on, the man told me that I was in Tuol Sleng. Without him telling me that, I would not know where I was.
If you were indeed brought to Phnom Penh, Mr. Witness, is it possible that you ended up in the Division 502 headquarters rather than S21?
No, I did not make any mistake, because when I fled the premise, I was fleeing through 502 headquarters near Spin Churuyongwa Bridge.
How did you know the way from the place that you escaped from to 502? Where in Phnom Penh were you? Did you recognize the streets? Which street numbers? Were you close to which boulevards? What is it that you remember?
I was given an escape route, so I had to follow the route on that map, and I simply follow the map of the route on the map, and then I follow it, and then I arrived at Wat Phnom. And I was told that I should get hold through the escape plan. Otherwise, if I got loose, then I would be lost, and then I would be risking my life, and his life would be also a risk.
Mr. Witness, I have many more questions to put to you, but I don't have any more time, I'm afraid. Thank you very much for answering my questions patiently.
President, thank you, Counsel, and the Chamber now hands the floor to the defense team for Kier Sampon to put questions to this witness. You may proceed, Counsel.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning to all of you. Good morning, Mr. Chanman. My name is Anta Gise, and I am the co-international counsel for Mr. Kisampan. And therefore, I'm going to put a certain number of complementary questions to you. I'm going to try to avoid being repetitive, and I'm going to ask you to help me by making sure that you answer as precisely as possible to the questions I'm going to put to you. One first point of clarification, witness. You spoke about the organization chart of the airport when you spoke about Levey, and when you spoke about his superior who was met, and when you spoke about the office chief Yang. So can we agree that Yang was below in rank Levey and Met?
Jane was chief of the office, and he had the authority to assign soldiers in the division. So the assignment was carried out by him, who was the office chief.
Yes, but my question was, as the office chief, did he have more power than Levey and then Met?
On the issue of authority, I can say that Mate or Levey gave instruction to Jane, the office chief, and further Jane would disseminate the instructions to us at the lower level. So I could say in practice it was Jane who seemed to have more authority, as he was in charge of assignments for all soldiers in the division.
But we agree that Yang had to follow Levey and Met's orders. We agree on that, right?
Organizationally, just as Jane was subordinate to Levey and Mate.
In your statement E3/5278, French ERN 00355864, in English 00292823, and Khmer 00287527. You also speak about another person by the name of Song, S-O-N-G, and you say that his name was Song, and he was the direct superior of the worker soldiers, and he was under Leving's orders. So can you provide more clarification about and give us more specifications about the Song?
Song also worked in the office. However, he was in charge of terrain survey and measurement, and there were worker soldiers, some worker soldiers under his supervision in dealing with the terrain survey and measurement. So he had a separate task from Jane.
And there is another witness who spoke here with regard to this subject. It was E3/3959. In E3/ in French, ERN 00486-100, Khmer ERN 00270168, and English 00278625. And this is a person speaking about a certain Chuok, Thuok. And does this Chuok ring a bell?
I do not recall it. I cannot remember it.
You also said that among the tasks that were given to you at the Kampong Chhnang airport, you would drive soldiers to an area where they would have to clear the field, and I'd like to know if back then, if your fuel was rationed, and how you would manage your fuel supply.
As for fuel, actually the person could get a fuel with a permission. There was a slip where a number of liters was requested, and the person could go to the fuel station to get the fuel. So it depends on the number of liters of fuel on that slip. Then the person in charge of the fuel would pump that correct amount onto the machinery.
One last point before the break, because as I can see, it is almost 11:30. Yesterday, you said at about 3 hours 39, you said that Met had given you direct instructions regarding the work you had to do. My question to you is as follows. Apart from the time when you were asked to go and fell trees with some soldiers, what other tasks were assigned to you by Met directly, since you said it was Yang who was in charge of the distribution of work?
Besides felling trees, I also received direct instructions from him regarding escorting the Chinese delegation, or driving them around, or to measure the terrain for the airport construction, to go to or to drive the delegation to the railway station. So I cannot remember everything. However, when it was needed, he would call me and gave me his direct instructions. So usually I would be called to go and meet him in person, and then he would give me instruction as to what I needed to do, or to go to the fuel station to obtain fuel for the vehicle that I drove. These are just some the examples that of the instructions that I directly received from him.
Monsieur le Président, je vois qu'il est 11h30. Donc...
Mr. President, it is now 11:30. I would continue in the afternoon.
President, thank you, Council. It is now time for our lunch break. We take a break and resumed at 1:30 this afternoon. Court officer, please assist the witness at the waiting room for witnesses and experts during the break, and invite him to the courtroom back at 1:30 this afternoon. Security personnel, you are instructed to take Kirsten to the waiting room downstairs and have him return to attend the proceedings this afternoon before 1:30. The court is now in recess.
សូមអញ្ជើញក្រកឈរ